Hello, I'm Gerard Cook-Brown. I'm a chemical engineering student who's had a reasonable amount of involvement in small business IT. I'm here with James Bannister and Dan Stewart from ITERTECH and Chris Cook-Brown from MRSL Enterprise. I'll let them introduce themselves properly.
Hi, my name is James Bannister. I'm the Managing Director of ITERTECH. We are a small-sized MSP specialising in cloud products and security.
I'm Dan Stewart and I'm the Technical Director of ITERTECH, and I specialise in choosing and pushing the technologies that we implement for our customers.
I'm Chris Cook-Brown and I run an insurance broker that focuses on the healthcare sector, so we have lots of sensitive data, hence we use ITERTECH to help us protect all that, and we also sell cyber insurance.
So I think really this discussion is about small businesses and small business IT, mostly focusing on what sort of security features in this day and age that we can look at implementing, what sort of security practices that we can look at, and I think if we start the floor off with James.
Any business has a digital estate, and the size of the business and the value of the business might determine where the attack comes from, but every business uses IT, and as such every business has a responsibility to protect the IT, and there's a very fine line between IT's working and IT's working securely, and it's really every business's responsibility to try and protect their data estate and understand their data estate. Most of the attackers out there, they're not necessarily targeting your business. What they're looking for is low-hanging fruit, and that could be predominantly for small business, just people who have systems in that aren't secured properly, and it's really an attack of opportunity. So yeah, everybody out there, it's potluck, but everybody out there is vulnerable to some type of cyber attack.
And what I see is the photos going around of, I think people think that the cyber is, some guy hacking for hours away and so on. And now you see sort of photos of basements in Bulgaria, which is just sort of, it's like a hacking farm. It's just like a bank of computers that are there, just got an email list and just sending stuff out. And no doubt it just sort of says, if somebody responds to the, it's almost like a business choice to be made. And I'm going to go into hacking people, and you were just saying you can just go and buy the kit off the internet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fairly knowledgeable in computers, it's fairly easy to get onto places like the dark web these days. If you live in a country that has very lax computer laws, you can probably don't even need the dark web. But it is business for these people. It is they buy a product, probably not £10, probably significantly more, but they will buy a product. That product will work as advertised. It will look for vulnerabilities. It will find those vulnerabilities and it will report back to them. And
but you're almost saying it's almost like a it's like any business. It's an investment choice, and it's maybe not £10, but it's maybe not £1 million. So actually, it's not very much money. So I don't actually have to, if I'm going to hit a few people for even 50,000, 100,000. I'm happy to invest 10,000 to do that, 20,000, and so it's really scaling it down. That's to us why small businesses are vulnerable. The guys there who are making a moderate but modest investment, and will go and just target. It's literally automated. It will target a bunch of people, and as long as he gets a few hits at 50,000, he's doing well.
Yeah, and unfortunately, your loss is his gain as well, and the way that you fight back against that is you have to be prepared, and you have to have the right knowledge, and you have to have the right security.
Yeah, and I mean, even with buying this stuff, it's not even sort of business these days. It's an entire industry. So you have the supply, you have a series of people supplying, sort of figuring out and generating a list. Somebody will go and buy this list.
So the smart guy now won't go and hack one thing. He'll basically go and work out how to hack your ISP, your classic, let's say BT Home Hub, because there's loads of those around. So he'll go and get a BT Home Hub, work out how to hack it, then he'll go and sell that knowledge for a few thousand a time.
It's a
to
complete,
hackers.
It's a complete mirror image to us and our industry. This person with the tool, they're the customer, and the actual hacker who's doing the coding and finding the exploits, that is the IT company, and we're mirror images of each other, and that's who you're competing against. You're competing against an entire industry.
I mean, when new vulnerabilities come out or they're found, you've got someone working on them, and they'll put them into the kind of mainstream, and as soon as people get wise to them, they package them and they sell them on, and then that's how they make a bit more money once that vulnerability is kind of being patched. It's not worth it to them, but there's probably a huge demand for it behind them, and they can sell it. So
so it's interesting, isn't it? It really is just a whole infrastructure and business, and it's automated. So the insurers we deal with is CFC, who were one of the original cyber underwriters, and they've actually got a really good in-house ethical team. And that ethical team actually goes into the dark web, and they've actually seen hacking groups plot attacks on their clients. So they've actually managed to close the loophole. They've seen what they're planning to do, go in and find the weakness, and close it down, which is great. So there's quite a lot about that. So I think that's the thing. So I think to me the first message is very much everybody's vulnerable.
Everybody's vulnerable. Anyone with a digital estate, which is anyone literally in this day and age who runs a business. There are a lot of frameworks out there to give sort of Joe Blogs understanding of what they should be doing. But anyone with a computer connected to the internet, anything hosted, is vulnerable to an attack.
So we've Jared and I were chatting earlier, and we kind of differentiated between, we sort of look at it that you got your sole trader, the guy with the laptop, and you say to me, it's like anything connected to the internet, which is anybody with a computer these days, basically. So you've got your sole trader running around with a laptop, they can be a target. Then you got your sort of maybe up to say 10 employees sort of thing, which is still quite small, but in many ways possibly even more vulnerable. I mean, if you look at our business, we post-COVID, everybody works from home, so we work across about 5 different sites. I mean, basically, and even have people who are using non-company kit and all sorts of stuff. So there's all sorts of potential holes there. So in some ways we're probably the most vulnerable. One of the issues with security is, and my business partner being a little bit older than me, and from days when everything was done with pens, probably not quills but pens, and stuff, he's not particularly familiar with tech, so he hates passwords. I mean, we've set his password, we tell him what it is, and 10 minutes later you say, Roger, what's your password? And he goes, what? So one of the criticisms of the whole security thing is, I need all these passwords, it's different passwords, I forget my passwords. There's the classic that everybody just writes it all down and pins it on the wall, and we've actually been looking around to check we haven't left any passwords obviously around here. But that's, again, if you set it up properly now, we're moving to a world where you've got passwordless, which sounds amazing, and how on earth is that secure? And single sign-on, which is, again, you've only got to get in once, so you only need one set of security. So what's that about, and how does it work? Is that easy to do even for small businesses?
It's a lot of this stuff is quite new, so I think most small businesses will go with something like a password manager to start with. You want a password manager allows you to have just one password to access all your other passwords. So you have one password to remember instead of tens, hundreds, and a lot of them will fill them in for you on a website, for instance. And a lot of them will actually make sure you're on the right website before filling them in as well.
I was going to say, I heard that as an advantage. So again, one of the things is people will just slightly change the link and make it so if you just glance at it, it looks okay, but it's actually a dodgy site. And the password manager says, no, that's the link, and that's not, what you're sending me to is not that link.
It's not perfect, but it's certainly it's just little things like that can save you a lot of time and a lot of headache and things like that. The other thing is single sign-on. When you get to a kind of a large organisation, you want to be able to integrate your specifically in this case Microsoft account with other websites. A single sign-on feature where there is a lot of websites these days will have a button underneath, a login button that says sign in with Microsoft. And that's that's another advantage, just one password that you need to remember. And then if you want to go one step further, with the release of Windows 11, you have kind of zero authentication or passwordless authentication.
So what does that really mean, passwordless? How, it's not just the computer's completely open and anybody can operate it. So
no, so what it's essentially doing is it's taking away your need to use your password to sign into things. It uses tokens, kind of like the two-factor authentication, which is another thing we haven't touched on as well yet. And it's quite new. I've actually started doing a lot of reading into it, and I'm still very much at the lower end of that at the moment.
So we try and use, and again, we're not perfect, but at least for our PCs now, we're generally moving to the Windows Hello, so it just recognises you from the camera. Yeah. And that's great. So when in the morning, I just sit in front of my computer, and the camera looks at me, and the light flashes away, and eventually it says, "Hi, Chris. Good morning," or whatever. And we're looking forward to the day we get that implemented for Roger.
Well, these things are designed to encourage you to set more complex passwords.
Yeah.
So your kind of name, or your children's name, your date of birth. Want to get away from those type of things. Things like Windows Hello means that you don't have to remember your password. It can be done on biometrics, it can be done on facial recognition, it can be done on a PIN, but the PIN isn't a password. The PIN doesn't do anything but unlock the TPM chip on the machine, and your password is encrypted and stored on the TPM chip on the machine. Then that populates and it lets you in.
Okay.
And that's just kind of getting you away from having to write, and the same thing Dan was saying, kind of getting you away from having passwords that you need to remember, passwords that you need to write down. If you have a password manager, it's exactly the same thing. You don't want to have the same password for everything. If that password gets breached, you're running around trying to change your passwords, and you don't really know the damage that's already been done. If you go and start setting random characters and links and strings for passwords, you're never going to remember them. So it's about finding that middle ground.
Yes.
And password managers are great for that, because you can tell the password manager, this is the password for this site. You remember one secure password. If you've got an IT company, they'll furnish you with a password policy, which is usually in line with whatever's recommended out there. People say, let's be more secure. Let's change your password every 30 days, every 60 days, every 90 days. And actually, that's not the best practice. It hasn't been for a while.
We've moved away from that for exactly that reason, because all it means is nobody knows their password.
Everyone's changing their password. And that encourages people to go, I changed it the other day, I can't remember. Let me set it to something similar. Let me move the numbers up by one.
Yeah, and let me put it on a big sign.
Let me stick it to my monitor so I remember it tomorrow morning, And that just breeds bad habits.
Yes.
Whereas actually what you want to do is train the staff to try and recognise if their password's compromised.
Yes.
And if they believe their password's compromised, then it's about having the procedures in place and what should they do.
Yeah.
First of all, alert the people who need to be alerted, and change the password. It's simple. And if you have that password for 365 days and it's fine, then you've shut that vulnerability.
You shut that hole. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? You see these things go around where now with computing power, it's there's a grid that I see go around saying how long does it take to crack a password.
Yeah.
And even if it's the classic sort of 8 digits, numbers, special characters and that sort of thing, it's still like about 5 minutes or something like that. It's actually you need 10, 12 digits and all those complex characters to be, for it to be years to crack now.
So if you've got a partner, Microsoft do banned passwords. They've got a global banned password list, which you can plug into, which you can actually then put passwords in yourself.
Okay.
So that if you have a organisation and someone's trying to set a password that's deemed unsecure or turned up on a banned password list, it's instantly blocked. And it's those little layers of security that you really could do with implement that not many people know out there.
No, it's not, and I guess it's not very expensive if you know how to do it. It's a matter of having the right support guys who can just say add this list, and then say you have an admin user in the firm that says we don't want French fries or whatever it is for because everybody uses it because we're a chip shop or whatever
in security, knowledge is power, and the more that you know about the security, the safer you are, and the less that other people know about you, and your security, the more secure you are as well.
Yes.
Which was going back to the radar. If you stay off their quote unquote radar,
Yes.
You become less of a target and less likely. So
No. I mean, it's kind of what we say in insurance is, why do you put a burglar alarm box on your house? Well, it's not that the burglar can't bypass the burglar alarm. It's just easier for him to break into the house next door that doesn't have one.
It's exactly that. I mean, your neighbours aren't necessarily going to come running around to protect your house, but they might just go, well, the one down the street doesn't. We'll go, and it's the same. If someone takes a pass at your infrastructure, runs all the scripts they've got and can't get in, they're just going to move on.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And just touching in on password and passwordless. If you have a complex password and you're using password authentication, that sits there. Anyone who tries to get into your platform is going to need to know the password.
Yeah.
Well, you're never going to remember it, but if you've got passwordless authentication, you don't need to remember it.
Yeah.
Thing goes off on your phone. You go, yes, that's me. In you go.
Yeah.
And these things are baked in. They're baked into fundamental for Microsoft. Microsoft want to keep their accounts secure. They want to keep your accounts secure.
Yeah.
And you need to. Everyone really should utilise kind of all these things as a standard.
And again, I mean, I might just if you've got some views on cost, because it gets back to me to be a little bit of firms actually need to start off with the view that tech is at the core of their firm.
Yeah.
Because again, with all this stuff, so the single sign-on and everything, part of what we're doing is we now have our CRM integrated with our Microsoft account, so the CRM and the email all talk together, which is integrated with our phones. So I log into my phone with my account, and then when somebody phones me, it brings up their records on the CRM, or I can click the phone number on the CRM and the phone just rings, and all these things. And there's the security aspect and all the single sign-on that brings, but actually it just makes my business a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Which is something we haven't touched on. If you get these things right, you can make your business more effective. It doesn't need to be hampered by security.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a number one security loopholes to jump through to get into a system. You can actually do it correctly and make it more dynamic at the same time.
Yeah. So I think that's a big point. Is actually if you set the infrastructure up right with the sort of security layers in it, now you can say, oh, that's all cost, but it's actually very beneficial cost to your business, and the efficiency gains we've had are huge. I mean, it's not we've got a process, and it's all sorts of things. We're going from the classic with 5 different spreadsheets and data all over the place and double entry and everything going wrong, which is fine when we were selling sort of 30 of this kind of product a month. We now sell more like 200 or 300 a month, so that's not fine, because it used to take us about 40 minutes to do each one.
Yeah.
We're now down to probably we got down to 5 minutes. We're probably down to about 3 minutes now,
something like that.
yeah. And we're targeting about 40 seconds, and that sort of thing, and that's all part of that is just getting all these tech systems integrated. So guess what? I only put the data in once, so I haven't got 5 different versions of it, and it all filters through and it goes right. And I've only got to spell some of these long complex names, talking about passwords, but we get some fairly long complex names of clients. I've only got to spell that right once and it filters through.
Yeah.
So I think there is, baked into security, there is a whole sort of IT thing, and it's about attitude really. It's about saying this is important, this is an infrastructure, and I actually gain benefits from this.
Yeah. It's about understanding your estate. Where the data is, how you access it, who accesses it, where they access it from, and working with partners that also want to understand your business model and the same bits and pieces we touched on earlier. You could speak to someone like, you need security, and they'll just sell you stuff. Well, actually, what you're looking for is security that fits yourselves.
Yes.
Microsoft include a lot with their licenses. But it doesn't mean that you want to get a partner in who goes buy the most expensive Microsoft license, because half the benefits in there might not be right for you, and you may get more cost savings and be more cost effective with someone who understands the licensing models.
Yes.
What do you need? What's the best license to get? And then someone who works with you to implement that.
Yeah.
The days of cookie cutter security, unfortunately, are over.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, also from an efficiency standpoint, I've worked with some people who have sort of each user has 3 or 4 passwords depending on what they're signing into. And if one of those changes, suddenly I have all sorts of password mismatches and all of that sort of stuff, which can be incredibly frustrating for people to try and remember which password goes where.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even there is an efficiency gain standpoint. from
think
that.
you're putting the wrong one in the wrong one. You're locking accounts out. You
Yeah.
need to speak to IT. You need to get them reset.
Once you sort of start to go up, we were thinking the sort of 20 to 50 size, and then the sort of 50 plus is where you really need the sort of full on. But so Jared and I were sort of chatting. I think the problem is, especially particularly with sole traders, but all those small businesses, is they just look at it and go, well, I don't know who to talk to. I'm worried about, I can go and talk to all these people, but I don't understand a thing, so they're just going to tell me I need all this junk that I don't need and rip me off. I can't afford it, and in some ways you can't afford not to.
Yeah. I mean, IT is an integral part of any business, and if you don't put funding towards your IT, you're going to end up. It's going to end up costing you in the long run.
Yes.
You've got to factor that in to any business.
And it's interesting that, because you look at it, and you're right. So we look at IT absolutely as actually it's sort of the core of our business. I mean, people talk about InsurTech and using tech in insurance, which I think is crazy. It's like people never talked about supermarket tech when supermarkets implemented scanners.
Yeah.
Tills is just supermarkets using technology to make their business more efficient.
Yeah.
And insurers should be doing that, and the insurance industry should be doing that as well. So we spend quite a lot of time doing that, and actually we have, so there is just another aspect. Part you need the security on what you produce. But I think that's a failing in a lot of companies, as they don't think of tech as almost the core of any business.
Yeah.
The problem is that now you can't do today what you could do 10 years ago. If you think sort of 10 years ago was almost the gold rush and golden age of tech, where you didn't need security because it was so new and it was very exciting. And now what we're finding is that if you haven't kept up to date with security, certainly in the last 5 years, you become vulnerable, because all of these systems, they didn't have the built-in security that you need now.
Yeah.
Because IT is now at the stage where it's now being weaponized, which sounds quite scary, but there's so much you can do just as best practice, which can mitigate a lot of these attacks.
Yes.
And that's where kind of IT has kind of moved from just being something that you limit your spending on as little as possible, to now that it's so integral to the business that you need to spend the money. In the same way that if you run a transport business, you would pay to keep your trucks secure. You'd maybe lock them in a warehouse if you could. You'd certainly never leave them unlocked on the side of the road.
Yes, yeah, well, it'd be uninsured if you did.
Yeah.
And just to build on that, the process and the security measures that you can put in, they don't differ depending on the size of the company.
Yes.
Good security practice should be adopted by the one-man band, the 50-man SME, or the £100,000 into our conglomerate.
Yeah, so you get that, and it's probably true throughout the company. So one of the issues that I think there's just generally a massive, people don't understand tech, they don't want to understand tech.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you sort of go about, I mean, when you take on a new client, I guess, a new client calls you up and sort of says, maybe I need some time. How do you go about that sort of process of helping?
It's very much you have to speak to the customer. Obviously, the stuff we've mentioned already, it sounds quite scary and insurmountable already, which is why you really need a professional who knows what they're doing. In order to kind of guide you through that process. So the first thing that an IT provider should be doing is asking you questions. If they come out the gate telling you what you need, if there's more than 2 or 3 basic items on there, then there's a high chance that they may be fleecing you. They need to ask you how you're operating, what you're using, if you have any practices, if you have any of these security certifications that are out there, Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, all of these are frameworks for companies to operate by that will help them with their security. Yeah. And if your IT provider or the person you're asking for isn't asking these questions, then they are probably in a similar boat to you, in that they don't know what they're doing.
And then I think the good news, certainly from working with you, I mean, and again, there's another thing in. Well, James and I were talking about getting old, basically. So,
Okay, that's gone public.
I'm very well. At least with me, the grey hairs are coming in, so I can't hide it. But okay, we're back on. So yeah, so I was saying the Microsoft security stuff was just a joke, and you had to have third-party security, and that's when all the Nortons and McAfees and all these things started. And now it seems that the Nortons and McAfees have become just commercial, they're marketing machines basically, and it's not necessarily particularly good. And also, it's so prevalent that hackers, the first thing they do is work out how to basically disable it and bypass it. So you were saying now the Microsoft stuff is actually the good stuff.
Yeah,
and it's all
Microsoft have, they've come on leaps and bounds, certainly back from when we were kids. You can't, Microsoft give a lot away. Microsoft put a lot of security products together, and they make it very easy for the small and the medium business to adopt very strong security posture. However, you still need to understand what it is you're buying from them. There isn't a set and forget as far as security goes. If you take something like EDR or Sentinel with Microsoft and you're ingesting log files from everywhere, that is a great tool. But if there isn't somebody who's actively monitoring it to catch these attacks as they start to break out, you're still just as vulnerable. So a lot of people seem to think that they can install their Nortons, their McAfees, and security tech done. That's not the case. There's so many attack vectors these days that people clicking on links, people downloading viruses, that's probably going to be where it comes from. But the delivery method for these is usually going to be something along the lines of phishing or spear phishing or some type of targeted attack at the users. So building a good security posture with your users, training, testing, that's where you can secure your organization. And speaking to specialists like ourselves that work with these systems that can help you identify where the holes are and help to mitigate those, that's really where you need to be starting.
So I think there is a thing, and actually, Joe, you were looking at something the other day, Joe, weren't you, where so it's somebody who's in, and it's just the classic. It's somebody who's, it's the entrepreneur who's gone into business, and so I need a computer. Well, what do I use? Well, I've got my computer sort of sitting in the corner there.
Goes to PC World, buys a PC.
Buys a PC.
They say, do you want security? They sell him Nortons,
they sell him Nortons, and he's got his home edition of Microsoft Office on it, so he just uses that and so on. So I think one of the first things we did, and again, you guys are helping us a lot with the new stuff. So the first thing to do, and the most basic, which actually isn't desperately expensive. The sort of fairly basic Microsoft business licenses give you Office, they give you security, they give you sort of endpoint management, they give you, as you said, quite a lot of stuff for actually not. It's like, I'm trying to remember, I think we pay about £20 per month per user.
You pay about £17, 16 something for Microsoft Premium, and that comes with your Defender, so base protection, your computer management, which allows you to ensure things like encryptions on. It makes you be able to manage the machine itself. It does your email filtering, which is a huge thing as well. But again, all these products are there for you, but they don't set themselves up. They don't monitor themselves either.
So if you're saying it's about £20, less than £20 a month per user, and then sorry if I'm just going to spring this on you, but roughly how much? So I'm a new business with 5 users. I say great, £20 a month, so that's £100 a month on that. Then how much, one, to set up, and two, and as you say, everybody's different and so on. But what's the sort of range? How much would people need to spend?
We actually have 2 packages, which we push forwards for new business. One is a kind of base new business package, which is about £26 per user, and that's incorporative setup. It's about £50 admin fee, and that is your license, your setup, your management. It doesn't come with your give us a call anytime you want, but we're always at the end of the phone, and it's just getting you off on the right foot. We do a slightly advanced package on that, which is kind of all your DNS management, web hosting. It's just the kind of more the bells and whistles that not one person probably wants, but certainly a 3-4 user companies.
Because all that DNS management actually is, again, we kind of like to think we know what we're doing, but we don't fully. I don't really, I do set my domain records, but I kind of know that Dan's there if all of a sudden
this was working, it's not now.
Yeah, if all of a sudden I'm cut off, at least my mobile's got Dan's number in it. Yes.
I mean, getting off on the right foot and staying on the right foot just means as your business grows, you don't get sort of hidden IT costs where suddenly you get to 20 people, 100 people, and suddenly you've got to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that actually. Interestingly, so for our particular firm, I took over the IT, and it's back to do people get ripped off in IT? Absolutely. I mean, my predecessor who looked after the IT for our firm was, ripped off blind. I mean, I've shredded them now for the old documents. I've shredded them because I was crying when I saw them. But I mean, it's like literally. As a small firm with sort of maybe even up to $1 million turnover, that particular firm at most probably more like $500,000, and they were buying servers plus setup plus this plus that, £15,000 servers that would do God knows how many. I mean, they're enormously powerful machines. I mean, how old are they, Gerard? They're about 12 years old.
The servers are about 2014 era.
Yeah. 2014, yeah, but it's still enormously powerful. It's still more powerful than we need today.
Yeah.
For all the stuff we do. I mean, we don't use it; it's being used for something else. But it was like this huge amount of money going out on this stuff. So it does happen. So I think it's one of those balances. I think it's getting the right tech guys and the right setup almost out the gates. Yeah. It should be one of those check boxes that I'm going into business or I'm expanding or moving to a new office. It's almost, unless you're pretty savvy yourself, don't try and do it yourself. And even then, unless, as I say, we like to think we're actually really quite savvy, but we still wouldn't like to do it ourselves. We still absolutely, the only reason we're confident in doing anything ourselves is because we know you guys are there.
Yeah, well, there's I think it's the same with any line of business. If you're not an accountant, don't try and sort your VAT out yourself.
Yes, yeah.
There's a funny story there from when we set up, but that maybe for another day. Again, you don't have to. IT doesn't have to be expensive, and you need to put the money in the right place. Yeah. Small businesses, you take cloud computing these days. You don't need to go buying huge, powerful servers and worry about storing and cooling. Yeah. Most business can run everything online these days. And if you can have this scalable solution such as Microsoft, where you can use Intune, you can have it as you require, and it will scale up and it will scale down. And if you do need to run servers, you can put stuff in Azure, and that's it's as close as you're going to get to one-click setup and forget. I would never suggest anyone just goes and does it themselves. Always, like anything else, seek some help from people that have the qualifications. And there are a lot of people out there, cowboys. That they are around. They'll tell you need X. They'll tell you need Y. Recommendations, word of mouth is always something to go on.
Yes, yeah. People who use the service genuinely, and so on. And it's interesting. The other one that you've seen recently, Gerard, is maybe just in case, so we don't need to get any lawyers out. I won't mention the name of the company, but there are some very big brands, and this is true in any of these complex industries. There's some very big brands who advertise a lot, and they say, we'll do all your Microsoft for you and this and that, and the reality is they will, but one, they basically put 100% loading on the price. So your Microsoft stuff is double the price. Yeah. And then two, it's just very much a cookie cutter, one size fits all. So you can go on their website, 3 clicks later, you've got it at twice the price, but again without all the security set up, without this, without just using a fraction of what it is. And actually, to be honest, from your package for less money, they can come to you and actually get the package at the right price, the Microsoft price, with all that setup and security and expertise behind it. So I think there's a danger in, there's always just because they advertise on TV doesn't make them brilliant.
No. And we've always been invested in the startups and the small business. Obviously everyone's been there. Everyone knows the trials, and if you get it right, like I said, straight out, and you work with a partner and you grow, we grow with you. And the tech's out there to allow you to adopt as your company requires.
So moving on a bit now, again, we've got, you need it, you have to do it, don't imagine it's not going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's happened to a poor guy in this village, a really nice guy, local businessman here, and he's lost at least one bill. Poor guy's had and he won't mind saying, because he's quite public about it himself, because he wants to help others, I think, and make sure it doesn't happen again. He's furious with the banks as well, thinking they're failing in this whole thing. But he's lost at least one business. He basically had a ski operator in a travel business. So guess what? This plus COVID has caused him big head problems. But he was subject to effectively a man-in-the-middle attack. So for his ski operator, he ran a fleet of vans to do the transfers to the slopes, from the airport to the slopes. That's a big insurance bill. So he outsourced his accounting stuff. He basically just sent an email. Just sent an email saying, "Oh, please pay this bill." Somebody sat in the middle of it, changed the bank details on the invoice, and guess what? 90,000 went to the wrong person. Yeah.
And it's such a horrible feeling when something like that happens, when and there's nothing that you can do to.
He sort of describes how his heart sank when these guys phoned up and said, "Have you paid the bill?" And it's like, "Well, I have," and they're like, "Well, no, you haven't." And it's
I mean, those type of attacks are probably the most commonplace. Phishing, any type of impersonation. These people, unfortunately, they get paid. Someone made some money out of that, and that keeps that business, that business afloat, while at the cost of the guy, the tour operator. The only way to mitigate those is with training, being able to spot them when they come in. It's you can get insurance, you can protect yourself for anything that happens after the fact, but it's never going to be as good as kind of trying to stop it before it
before
starts.
It happens. And then, what do you guys see? And I guess there's also, it happens, and then there's the cleaning up the mess.
Backups are your lifeline, and it's the same backups, vulnerability management, or patching. People can say, "Do you have it?" Yeah, we have backup. Tick. No, your backups, they need to be encrypted, segregated. Kept completely detached from your system. If somebody gets into your system, the first thing they're going to do is try and corrupt your backup. If they try and install a ransomware on there, or they try to crypto all your files, well, they want to charge you 3-4 bitcoins in order to get it all back. And most people, if they can get hold of your backups as well, the chances of you paying that goes through the roof. If your backups are segregated, you're just going to say, "No, thank you very much," wipe your system, restore it. Your outage is going to go from being weeks or months, and having to deal with third parties and purchase some crypto and send it across, to we don't need it, we're back up in 24 hours.
So that's what you say. Your best security for almost any hack is basically just say, "I've got last night's backup." So I will literally strip my entire system down, clean it all out, restore last night's backup. Then okay, I might have lost a few hours work, but I'm back up and running.
There's a few caveats to that. For instance, if it's a targeted attack, it's likely that they've been in your system for more than a week. So maybe last night's backup might not be the best, but what is losing a week's worth to losing 5, 10 years worth of work? It takes your time, restoration time, down again, as James said, from weeks to days, depending on how much data you have. If you have a disaster recovery solution as well, you can be back up in hours. And we've had not with our company, but with previous companies I've worked with, we've had someone who was crypto locked, and they had to pay in order to restore their data, and it said you shouldn't pay.
But what else do you do?
But
there are businesses,
and
you've lost your business if you don't get it back.
Exactly.
But there's actually businesses out there that are set up to process these payments, to make sure you get your data back and they get paid.
Okay, so intermediaries basically.
It's effectively intermediary.
I've got the money, now give me the data.
Some people probably do it to watch the world burn. A lot of people do it because there's a lot of money in it. You don't need especially these days. You don't need to have a huge degree in cyber security to be a hacker. You can just go and purchase the kit, try your luck, see what you get.